I never get one of the proverbial six packs that everybody's looking for. Um, the ability to go back and run and feel that again, priceless.
Welcome to The Perfect Workout. I'm Jordan Thompson, and today we sit down with Rich Turner of Del Mar, California, to talk about his experience with The Perfect Workout. Rich went from being somebody who was an avid runner and not a fan of the gym whatsoever, to joining our one-on-one personal training, gaining strength, and being able to regain the ability to do something he loved to do, which turned out to be absolutely priceless. Stick around for the story. Meet Rich. Hi everyone, it's Jordan Thompson with The Perfect Workout, and today I am joined by one of our clients, Rich Turner. Welcome, Rich. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so where do you normally train with us when you're in the studio?
The Del Mar studio. Yeah, the Del Mar studio.
How long have you been with us?
I think I'm closing in on, I'm over 2.5 years. It's going on 3.
Okay. And tell me a little bit about what initially brought you in, your beginnings with The Perfect Workout.
Sure. Well, let's see. I retired about 3.5 years ago, roughly. And for a few years before that, I had seen a number of print ads. And it was intriguing, particularly at the time working fairly long hours. It was intriguing. Everybody references the short time frame with maximum results, and sounded like a great idea. And like a lot of my great ideas, it just never happened. But I was always pressed to figure out a way to develop some, or to incorporate at least some sort of strength training, which I really had never done, although I was fairly active in a variety of sports and activities, but never any isolated strength training whatsoever. And I think as time has gone on, with or without Perfect Workout, I became convicted that strength erodes over time, even though you can't necessarily see it or feel it at any given point. And so there was this kind of confluence of kind of being very aware that I had a need, also being pretty aware that I had never been attracted to major gyms and activity centers, crowded, loud, lots of overlap on equipment, and often a very young transient crowd coming and going. I needed something where I felt like I could focus and concentrate just on whatever my personal objectives were, and not necessarily try and match them or gauge them against, a 25-year-old standing next to me on the same machine. And that, over time, that just kind of diluted my enthusiasm for gym, but enhanced my perception that I needed to find something. I noticed how close it was. So the convenience for us here in San Diego area, there are a lot of studios and a lot of options, and that helped a lot. Proximity directly addressed my needs. Great first session that introduced me to kind of the concept. They deceptively allowed me a little bit of success in my first session.
Tell me more about that.
Well, the first session is great. I mean, it's twice as long as any other session, as everybody knows. So instead of a half hour allotted, it was allotted a full hour. There was a lot of conversation, a little bit of an interview on goals and things like that to start. And that was helpful, but we still had a lot of time on each of the apparatus as well, quite a bit more than what we do now on a normal rotation. So we were able to kind of talk through it, and there was a lot of chit chat and discussion about how each machine or each exercise was addressing what muscle groups, and how this would proceed in future sessions. The first session was great fun. I hadn't been on apparatus for decades. Really enjoyed being back on it. I loved the kind of the vibe, the rhythm of the studio. the introduction really sold me. It was like, okay, the biggest thing was getting here the first time for me, because I'd had any number of other opportunities to go any number of other places. And but I didn't do it. So anyway, it got really well.
And that is the hardest part for anybody, any of us trying something new, starting something new, is just taking that foot outside the door and like getting the next foot in the door to the studio. So I would totally agree that that's the hardest part, because the second you show up to the studio for that introductory session, or even show up on a Zoom call like this for your like virtual introductory session, you're walked through everything every step of the way. And that's what I think is a huge value in what we do in that one-on-one aspect, is that you don't have to think about it. You don't have to know any of this. Like, we'll teach you what you need to know and hold your hand throughout the process. And it sounds like that's been a similar experience to what you've had.
I think one of the interesting things is everybody comes from different walks of life and different levels of experience in athletics. They're possibly because of the region where the studio is located. There are a lot of people who have been very successful in various walks of life, and it's very diverse in a lot of different backgrounds. But a number of people have led companies or done some very interesting things in their lives. But we all kind of seem to have something a little bit in common, and that is that we need to be led. Perhaps having been leaders in various parts of our lives, I found that I really wanted to be led, and I was just like, okay, I'm going to suspend my disbelief here. I'm going to suspend, whatever I might be feeling 5 minutes before the session starts, thinking I'd rather be doing anything but this, because I do get those emotions.
We all do.
Yeah, absolutely, of course. And it's just very, very helpful to just kind of hand the baton over to Tim and say, okay, I'm gonna kind of blank out here and do exactly what you tell me for 30 minutes. I was a runner for 25 years. Had injuries towards the end of that kind of started to shut me down a little bit. And I was a biker, and I was a swimmer, and I did triathlons down here. I did many, many marathons, and I did lots and lots and lots of thousands of miles of running. And the only other club membership that I'd ever had was at a 24-hour fitness. It was something else. Maybe it was Family Fit, transitioned over the years. And all I used it for was a shower, so I could run at lunch or run before work, and then I'd go there for a shower, and that was it. That was the only thing. But I belonged to it for 15 years, maybe. Gyms, for my little interaction in gyms, was almost the antithesis of that. I mean, it seemed to me, and it's not fair because I can't say I ever really sampled it, but it was the opposite of that in many respects. It was a grind. It was something you had to force yourself to do. The atmosphere was not at all what I was, the environment, I guess I should say, is not at all what I was looking for. It was inside, it was confined, it was sweaty, lots of people around, mirrors, I didn't want any of that, so all those things were unappealing. And so I know I'm rambling for you.
No, well, this is good because it's leading me to a question. And for anyone who's never stepped foot into any of our studios, you may have a hard time picturing this, but it is the complete opposite of everything that you just mentioned, right? It's small, it's intimate, it's clinical. There's no mirrors, there's no music, there's essentially no distractions. It's just one-on-one training going on, in the other rooms or the big room, depending on the studio you're at. So like knowing that was what a gym was in your mind, and knowing that it wasn't something that you wanted to do or a place to go. What did you think when you actually stepped foot into the Del Mar studio?
First 5 minutes was like, second 5 minutes was trainer focused. And then the first half hour, was trainer focused. And then it was, maybe after that, it was like all the trainers and all the clients focused, where you kind of got a better impression of, of what a kind of a day in the life looks like, as opposed to, opening the door or first impression. And to me, all I see are the machines and the trainers now, and the rest of it doesn't much matter. I did used to sit and gaze, kind of read through some of the biographies that they have framed or hanging on the wall, and not biographies. I picked the ones that seemed the least likely to have been true and the most remarkable as kind of goals. And so I think there was only one at the time, only one guy that had reached 600 pounds on the leg press. Leg press is the big thing. Everybody talks about their leg press in their testimony. But clearly, the most progress can be made in the leg press over others. I haven't developed a bicep curl at 600 pounds yet, but working on it. But at any rate, so I picked the guy. He was sick. He's older than I am by a pretty good measure, but he made 600 pounds, and it's just all common because I think she started me at like 225 pounds or something on the leg press. And of course I didn't fail, but I thought, oh man, 225 pounds, how many decades will it take me to get to something like even 400, or maxing the machine out, which is I think like 480 or whatever it is. And it just seemed insurmountable. And she said, well, it took me about 6 or 8 months to get to 400. And I thought, 400? And she's just, slim and fit and young. And oh. And so at any rate, so the reality of it hit me that, you got to be kind of goal-oriented and start setting some goals. And so, I wanted to be able to leg press as much as she, I outweigh her by
as much as your trainer?
75 pounds or whatever. What's that?
I said you wanted to like do as much as your trainer?
Yeah, I mean, to start with. I mean, she wasn't bragging. She was trying to be encouraging when I said, man, I don't think I can ever put, those numbers. And she goes, oh, yeah, you can. I got to 400. And so at any rate, so those sorts of things were kind of helpful. The testimonials helped.
So you've been with us for almost 3 years, and I loved the depth in which you talked about that introductory session, because I think that's typically the turning point for many of us. We have to go through the exercises. We have to experience it for ourselves to really understand the method and put like this whole 20 minutes twice a week thing together. I'm super curious what your experience was like going through the virtual introductory session.
So the difficulty factor has not changed. Some things that I've noticed about myself in the virtual sessions are that I can see at certain limits how easy it is for me to give up. And the virtual session has helped in that. I really look forward to them, and I'm really, really happy that we've been able to continue. So it's not the same as machines. I'll look forward to being on machines, and hopefully that's not all that far away. But in the interim, absolutely, it has been, a real lifesaver. Is overly dramatic, but I will just say that's not even appropriate in these days, but I will just say that it has been, from a psychological, emotional health standpoint, the ability to still look forward to regular workouts, to feel completely drained and a little bit sore, knowing you're still working on the same muscle groups. And in a broader sense, I'm not worried about whether my bicep curl ends up dropping 5 pounds or something like that when we get back to the gym, but mostly just really grateful that we can continue to stay healthy. And I feel like it has been just a dramatic benefit to us. But we travel from time to time, and when we do get out of town, sometimes it has been for some extended, a month, sometimes up to 2 months, but a month and a half anyway. So 4 to 6 weeks has been we have a few places that we go. It's not just that we're constantly, moving around. Any rate, one of the things that's been really hard has been the fact that, we start to feel slug-like and listless and fatigued by the absence of a regular workout program. And it's difficult to simulate those things when you're traveling. The virtual sessions, in addition to really filling the void now, have given us some, and I think there's been some talk about, what if, Rich and Grace call in and Tim gives us our virtual workout we go up to Bend, Oregon. So that's where we go frequently. But if we had, just minimal equipment there as well, that we could utilize and still maintain our twice a weeks virtually, to me, that's would really, really be worth it. And so, very encouraged that this exists now and that it's been kind of tested out. The real need to try, because of this extended quarantine, I'm really glad we did. And so it's been really, really helpful, very challenging. So I like it.
Yeah. What makes it challenging? You do have equipment. You said you're working with some limited equipment, but it is different, absolutely different than being stationary on a Nautilus machine, leg pressing 600 pounds. So what still makes it difficult from your perspective?
Well, it's amazing, how difficult you can make some very basic isometric exercises. Doing what do we call it? The backward, it's a tricep exercise on the bench when you have your legs out in front of you and you're lifting yourself, and you're back to the bench and you're lifting yourself up and down, kind of a reverse push-up. And
okay. Yeah, tricep dip.
Tricep dip. Thank you. I don't know how that exactly lines up with any of the equipment we use. But it's at least as hard as any other tricep exercise. And I mean, it's just sitting right here in this room. I could use a chair. In any event, they are very, very challenging, but partly because of that. Another thing that I've noticed too is just because of the equipment is the machines are much better at isolating muscles and controlling the weight. And so, whether it's isometrics or whether it's dumbbells instead of a machine, you're doing lunges with 50 pounds in each hand, and those sorts of things. So balance, is more of a challenge, and all the compensating muscles to address the balancing, makes it difficult to line the exact weight up with what you might have done with a similar exercise back in the studio. But that's not a problem. I mean, I don't see that as a detriment. I just see it as those are just interesting things to overcome. And Tim and we are just constantly dialing that in, but it's an interesting process. Like he'll raise a weight by 5 pounds on the dumbbell that we thought was already too challenging the week before, but it turns out he's right, and it was really something that once we learn how to do many of these exercises properly, we can focus a little bit more on the weight we're using to do it or the position that we're in to accomplish it. And so all of that I think is a learning process, but I enjoy it a lot, and I enjoy learning. And it
when it sounds like you're still very much getting led, like you were in the studio. You mentioned that earlier. We as clients need to be led throughout these workouts. That's part of that coaching. And so you feel like you're still getting that in your virtual session.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Part of the thing that we don't get virtually is Tim or the trainer setting everything up for us in between while we kind of pace around and drink water. And so, I have to move.
You kind of live for those moments in between the exercises too, because it's like a little break.
I'm gassed, and then I have to lug those dumbbells over to the carrier and make a different adjustment and take them back to a different space and against the wall instead of the bench, or and I'm tired in between. Now Grace has yet to experience that, I will say, because I'm schlepping all the stuff in between her exercises now and changing the weight settings.
What a good husband.
Well, let's just say it's
like your final exercise.
Yeah. No, it makes the 30 minutes go a little bit easier. And she actually has helped too on a few of my finishing exercises. And it really, that part is kind of an additional part of the workout. But yeah, no, Tim is prepared. So I was just saying, he sends the list of exercises so I just like you helped me with the tricep dip, the name of the exercise. Not all the names, are immediately convey exactly the position that I'm supposed to be in and all that sort of thing. And so, once I get in the right position, everything, I remember all the exercises. I know where to bend and how to hold and whatever. But so he sends those ahead of time. I have a chance to at least review it. If there are one or two that I don't recognize from the description, we'll chat about it really quickly. And that way I can move a little bit more quickly through the exercises without constantly questioning, how to set it up. So,
so there's still that element of not really having to think about what you are doing.
Yeah.
So my last question before we start to kind of wrap things up is, you mentioned earlier experiencing a lot of like the psychological and emotional benefits of doing this, and you've clearly gained strength being able to go from, what was it, like 225 pounds to 600 pounds on the leg press. But I'm curious, what are some other things that you've experienced, whether that's like goals you've hit or benefits, or how have you seen this, whether it's virtual training or in studio training, transpire into your day-to-day life? How's it helped you?
I would say, everything all the time, but that would be hyperbole. I don't want to exaggerate. There have been some things. I can absolutely attest to the fact that muscle definition, particularly arms and thighs and legs has been, substantial. But this isn't about a beauty contest, though that's not going to happen. But the strength in doing normal activity. So a normal activity around here is landscaping, for example. So I do a lot of work here in our yard. We have a fairly large yard where we've just installed a lot of plants and features and a lot of things, and it requires a lot of upkeep. Instead, a lot of people like to downsize and simplify, and what we did when we retired is we upsized. So we got a bigger house, and we added a high maintenance landscape plan. So exactly the opposite of what we should do. But I mean, part of it is because I love the activity, and I love working out there. And so, hauling, concrete blocks, or, laying irrigation, or, carrying plants, it's like 450 feet from our driveway down to the area where all these, anyway, a lot of stuff like that. And I like being part of the crew, and that's working on the art. And so that's a hobby, and I love doing that. Secondly, when I started, it took me about 6 months of the weight training before I kind of gingerly waded back into the running part of my life. I had kind of suspended it for, I don't know, probably 8 or 10 years. I had knee surgeries, and the idea of getting back into it was difficult and painful. And so, just like we talked about weight training, but it's absolutely true with endurance things, that starting again is really hard. After 6 months, though, I started doing some walk runs where I would do little slow running intervals in the course of a walk. And then I started doing runs exclusively just on a treadmill that we have here. And I found that And I attribute it to, I haven't been to an orthopedist, but I attribute it to much stronger, fully developed leg muscles, both, quads and hamstrings and everything around it. But I was able, having not run for years, able to get to 10 minutes on my first run, 20 minutes after a week, and 30 to 35 minutes after 2 or 3 weeks. And now I'm running every day about 35 minutes. And so, having done it for 25 or 30 years, the ability to get that back, that was, to me, that was amazing. That was so much better than being able to lift up, a couple of cement blocks, although that's still a good thing to do. But the ability to basically be free to do an activity that was such a big part of my life for so long. I was racing all the time, and people that are involved in those sorts of things. And any rate, I love doing it, and now I love doing it again. And so to me, that was probably if nothing else happens, and I never get one of the proverbial 6-packs that everybody's looking for, the ability to go back and run and feel that again, priceless. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I bet your trainers are probably really proud of you for doing it consistently, and even now doing it consistently, while we're all sheltering at home. And it's just really cool because it's, may not always be fun. It may be really grueling sometimes, but
yeah,
what it's been able to do to enhance the things that you love to do, and that bring you a lot of joy is pretty awesome. So thank you for sharing.